Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Right, this afternoon, what are we up to? Well, I've got a really special range of episodes lined up, 3 in actual fact, all from the same company. I was fortunate enough to be paid a visit by those very, very nice people at Compass Box, who left me a sample of their entire core range and one of the specials, and so I got so many to share with you. I will be doing 3. This will be the first of 3 parts, a triple header if you like, and we'll really get to grips with the whole of the Compass Box range. And I've been a big fan of Compass Box for a long time. I love the experimental attitude of John Glazer, the guy behind Compass Box. Now, for those of you that don't know, John is very much into his oak, and I love this kind of experimentation. I mean, there's so many distilleries that will just go down the same old path without any innovation. Partly that's due to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Association. Sorry. And their sort of somewhat dogmatic approach to Scotch whisky. But anyway, as you know, sort of John sort of went out, sourced barrels, and created these custom barrels, which were American oak barrels. What he did was he took the ends off them, put French oak ends and French oak inner staves, and produced a whisky called Spice Tree, which we will taste, or the latest incarnation we will taste in, I think probably the third part of the show, and immediately fell foul of the Scotch Whisky Association, who deemed that this was not traditional practice. I mean, come on, traditional practice. I mean, what is traditional about Scotch whisky? Yeah, all right, okay, you can argue the fact of the way it's produced, from what it is produced from, but from what it was aged in. I mean, if you go back to Victorian times, you go back to the sort of early to mid 1900s, basically whisky manufacturers were sticking their stuff into whatever casks they could get their hands onto. Yes, there was a lot of American oak barrels knocking about, because obviously, as you know, to make an American bourbon, the cask can only be used the one time, so there's a lot of those left over. There was ex-cognac casks, ex-sherry butts, ex-port pipes. They were all knocking about because of shippers would ship these barrels directly into the UK and bottle them in the UK, hence early landed cognac, etc, etc. So it wasn't exactly that the whisky industry designed what they were going to use to age their spirit in. It was a case of using what was commercially available. Now, because somebody has come along and decided to sort of like tear up the rule book with regards to what things should be matured in, this is now sort of, ooh, this is kind of paramount to opening Pandora's box, And I've written several articles for various magazines and what have you, saying that this kind of innovation should be being supported, not sort of crushed under the heel, shall we say, of bureaucracy. And just because one person, one distillery, one company wants to do something a little bit different, whether it's using a different mash bill, different casks, doesn't mean that everybody's going to do it. I mean, a lot of distilleries would basically carry on releasing their whisky as they've done for decades, because that's what their customers want. A few of them might well decide to do something a bit weird and wonderful to see if it sells, but certainly it's not going to change the face of the whisky industry, in my personal opinion. And so you look at sort of companies and distilleries outside of Scotland, you look at distilleries in America where they're doing sort of weird and wonderful things. You've got Corsair, you've got Balcones. You know, they're making some really interesting whiskies. Whether you like them or not, like the flavours, the tastes, is arguably secondary to sort of what they're trying to do. They're trying to innovate and trying to create not necessarily a new product, but a bit of a twist on a new product. And I think the whisky industry as a global industry is big enough to be able to take these kind of mavericks and, you know, absorb them, I suppose, and let them kind of get on with it, because there's definitely a market for it. I mean, people buy these whiskies, so, you know, why not let sort of Scottish distilleries tap into that market? But anyway, I could go on for hours and hours and hours about this kind of thing, because it really does annoy me that the fact that if you're a Scottish company, a Scottish distillery, you just can't do these things. You can't innovate. You know, you can't, you know, think outside of the box. I mean, yeah, it really annoys me. It really does. And it, you know, there are other things that annoy me as well. But that's a big bugbear, and I really think that when they sort of kicked off about these custom casks, I mean, John should have basically stuck to his guns and said, fine, I'll carry on releasing it. I won't call it whiskey then. I'll call it something else. You know. Admittedly, I remember tasting the very first Spice Tree, and it was a big oak overload. It was very buttery, very Chardonnay-like. There was probably a little bit too much French oak going on, to be honest with you. And have subsequently tasted Spice Tree, and well, I'll obviously tell you about that when we finally get to it. But in saying that, you know, I've never, to my knowledge, tasted a Duff whiskey that Compass Box have released. Some have been more to my taste than others, as is always the case. And you know, I really think that if you've never tasted any of their range, then hopefully, you know, this little tasting will sort of you know, intrigue you enough to go and have a look at them. So I guess that's probably enough waffling. Got that off my chest, so to speak. So let's introduce this afternoon's little lineup. What would have happened if we never met? Right, okay, so as you know, Compass Box do a lot of blends, they do a lot of vattings, and they've got quite a broad range of stuff. So it was, I guess, a bit of a challenge to kind of like break it all down. But I thought what we would do for this first episode of the show was we would look at 4 of their blended whiskies. Firstly, we'll kick off with a bottling called Asyla, which is bottled at 40%. Now, Asyla is a blend. It is comprised of malts from the distilleries of Longmorn and Tianish, with the grain coming from Cameron Bridge Distillery, aged in first fill American oak. Now, I remember when this first was released, I believe they used a chunk of Linkwood. I think Linkwood was replaced by Tianish. I mean, this is the thing with blends; they do change over the years, mainly because of being able to get hold of specific types of whiskey, casks, all that kind of stuff. So it has changed over the years, but you know, we'll see. It's always been a favourite of mine. I have to say that. So we'll, you know, see what it looks like. Next one we'll be looking at is the Great King Street Artist Blend, which is bottled at 43%. Now this has got a huge list of where it comes from, what it's been matured in. Now the bizarre thing is that on their website they can't actually state this. Now this is another thing that really gets my goat, is that in this current climate, people that sort of drink whiskey don't just drink whiskey and go, yeah, it's nice whiskey. They want to know what it's made from, where it comes from, where the barley's grown, etc., etc., etc. And I think there should be more disclosure. I mean, the caramel issue is a big one. I mean, certainly in Germany, in parts of Scandinavia, where caramel, artificial caramel is used in bottlings, it has to be stated on the label. And now, and according to the Chris from Compass Box, they are simply not allowed to tell you where it comes from. I mean, this is nuts. Why not? What is wrong with telling people what is in the bottle and where it comes from? So you kind of have to guess. So anyway, the Great King Street comprises of 46% lowland grain. Now that could come from a number of different lowland grain distilleries. 28% of a Highland malt, which I would guess is probably, from tasting it, tea and ish. 17% of another Highland malt, again my guess is that it's Clynelish, and 9% Speyside malt, which I don't know, I haven't got a clue where that might come from. The maturing has been done 60% of it in first fill American oak barrels, 26% of it in John's custom barrels. Now, of course, when the Scotch Whisky Association kicked off about this, they eventually let him use the barrels if he took out the inner staves. I mean, what is the difference? Why is French oak inner staves and end pieces not traditional, but French oak end pieces with no inner staves, why is that traditional? Good question. Anyway, and the final component is 8% in first fill sherry butts. Third bottling we have here is the 2 experimental blends that they've done at Kingsford, which is kind of quite interesting. They've done these 2 experimental blends, and I believe whichever's voted the most liked will probably stay as part of the range, and then they'll probably do some more experimental blends. So this is 00V4, which is the experimental sherry, again bottled at 43%, and this one is the experimental smoked. So well, you can't guess what. It's got a bigger Asyla component, probably Colila, I think, from having tasted it. It's TR06, and I think this one is a blue label, I think. Could be wrong, but anyway. And is bottled at 43%. So there you have it. That is this afternoon's little blended lineup. So without further ado, shall we kick off with the Asyla? Right, okay, so let's start with the Asyla. Let's see what those gives us. An obvious first fill American oak character. A lot of rich, creamy, toasty vanilla. But that grainy lowland note comes through. There's a lovely citrus note, bit of spice, bit of honey, lightly herbal. I mean, it's a lot heavier on the oak than I remember it to be, and probably a little bit more grassy and citrusy, maybe. I mean, obviously substituting a slightly heavier, denser malt whisky like Linkwood for a lighter spey like Tea and Ish is going to give you a slightly different character. And I suspect that they probably in the past used less first fill American oak, and I'm guessing they're using more first fill American oak now to kind of flesh it out, because the sort of the Tea and Ish is a little bit more linear, possibly. You know, it tends to be a sort of like quite a light classic sort of spey. You know, I think blenders love it because of that kind of reason. But anyway, getting back to the nose, yeah, it's a lovely nose. I really like this. It's harmonious. You're getting elements from all aspects, and again, it's balanced. There's no, I mean, yeah, all right, there is a fair amount of oak, but it doesn't go OTT. It doesn't block out every other aroma. And certainly, like I said, you're getting elements of the spey. You're getting a bit of deeper honey from the Highland malt. We're talking about Highland malts now. And you're getting a slightly deeper honeyed character. You're certainly getting the grain note. And yeah, that's a lovely nose. Oh, it's got a lovely spicy kick on the finish. Again, a lovely, easygoing, summery aperitif kind of blend. Kicks off with quite a lot of the oak. You get sort of the creaminess, the vanillins, the you know, that big wood character. Then you get a little bit of the grassy, citrusy spey coming through on the middle. And the spices build really, really nicely. All the while it's very harmonious, very soft. You're getting a lot of a lot of character in it. I mean, you know, and 40% doesn't really need to be much more than that. The alcohol has just got enough kick just to keep the freshness going, stops it becoming overly oaky, overly soft and sweet. Um, and yeah, I think that's really balanced. I don't think that would need to be bottled at anything higher than that. Um, so yeah, nice starter, I think. Good one. Okay, on to the Great King Street. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Now this is a different animal entirely. It's a lot more grainier, herbal, coffeed, um, edgy, more edgy, less kind of overt American oak, obviously, because that's only although a large proportion of the blend. It's certainly not dominating. There's a little bit of herbal, dried fruit coming through from the sherry. A little bit of toastiness, a little bit of that. I mean, when you taste, and I have noticed with aging certainly, using French oak, obviously the grain is tighter and it gives you a tighter feel to the whiskey, to the oak notes. It's not so sort of smooth and creamy. It has more of an edge, excuse me, a tightness almost. Certainly the nose shows quite a fair degree of that. Again, it's really harmonious. There's a lot of deep honey character, a little bit of grassiness, bit of citrus. But yeah, that is really very complex. And I mean, I've stocked this now for quite a while, since the first time I tasted it. I was really impressed. I mean, you know, it comes in a 50 cl bottle. Retails for around about sort of 30 odd quid mark, and you know, you could do an awful lot worse, I think. And I think for people that have never had blends, really should look into this, because this is amazingly complex. And I mean, you know, this kind of ticks the boxes for a blend. I mean, like I said, when we were tasting Antiquary a couple of weeks ago, that the whole idea of blend is creating something that doesn't exist within nature. It's taking elements and creating something that becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And this certainly has it in absolute spades. Yeah, this is really very good. Palate. A lovely liveliness to it. Palate shows more of the American oak, a lot more creamier, soft, certainly on the entry, but all the while you have this kind of spicy, tight oak notes, just nipping at the edges, right on the edge of your palate. Again, it's quite full. It's got some nice honey character, a little bit of grassiness, a little bit of citrus, but it's a lot more robust. The sherry is very subtle. Adds just a little bit of dried fruit to it. Just again, you know, like any great recipe, you don't necessarily want to taste every component per se, you know, but you want it just to influence slightly. And I think that often with the use of sherry casks, as you know, they can be very blanketing. They can be very, they can overpower all the other sort of flavours and character. And so just a little bit of sherry just adds just a sort of little nuance, a little dried fruit, a little bit of spice as well. You know, that's very long. That's really impressive, and you know, really should try that. That's good. Right, okay, so on to the experimental sherry batch. Let's see what notes gives us on this. More sherry, obviously. It's that sort of slightly confected, boiled, sweety kind of sherry. The sort of character I often find with that Lowland distillery that I'm struggling to. Auchentoshan, that's the one that I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it's all right. It's not as complex as the Great King Street, the standard blend, shall we say? There's a little bit of spiciness. There's a little bit of tight French oak grain, a little bit of malt, touch of molasses, dried fruit. Again, it's not a huge sherry monster, but obviously there's more of the sherry character, and it does seem to be. It certainly doesn't have the complexity of that one, shall we say. I mean, it's not a bad blend by any stretch of the imagination, but I think sort of using that little bit more sherry cask is certainly meaning that the sherry is the more dominant aspect of this particular blend. And yeah, it's dusty, it's spicy, it will appeal obviously to sort of people that like more sherry component and love sherry matured whiskies. But for me, I'm going with that one to start. Certainly on the evidence of the nose, anyway. Palate. Very soft, very toffeed, or sort of rum and raisiny kind of character to it. Dried fruit, a little bit of spice, soft. Don't really get an awful lot from the French oak. There's the creaminess may well be coming from the American oak component, but it's mainly the sherry. It's the dried fruits. It's the spices, the toffee, the coffee. It's pleasant enough. I don't think it has the complexity of that, but it's certainly not too shabby. Right, okay, and finally the experimental smoke. So let's see what the nose gives us then. Peated, surprise, surprise, and like I said, I think Kaolila. Yeah, it's got that sort of edgy, sort of crisp fruit, a little bit of honey, some obvious smoke, a little bit of coastal peat, a little bit of astringency. But I think, like the sherry, I think when you start using peated malts in your blends, again, they can be the sort of the dominating factor. And I suppose you could argue that that's the point of these two experimental batches. And tasted alone, or certainly nosed alone, then they're not bad. But they don't have the character, they don't have the complexity of the Great King Street, because they're starting to become a little bit more singular focused. That's not to say they're bad. They're not. They're certainly not bad at all. I mean, this is a lovely nose. I mean, I love my peat. I love my Islas, and I'd quite happily drink this. It's really, not peat monster. Although we will get onto the peat monster, and we will, well, sort of. You know what I mean about the peat monster. You know what I've said. I've said it so many times, and but anyway, that's for a later episode, shall we say? Anyway, coming back to this, yeah, it's nice. It's phenolic. It's fresh. It's got some peated character. It's nice. It's I can see it would appeal to people that sort of like this kind of style of whiskey. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's a good. It's good. It's well made, well put together. It just doesn't have the complexity of the standard bottling. Anyway. Palate. Soft, creamy, lovely smoky finish, a sort of mingling of peat smoke and coal dust smoke, a little bit of spice, but again all the focus is certainly on the smoke, the peat. Nice fresh finish, bit of licorice, a little bit of tar, but that's what it is at the end of the day. The Islay component is definitely dominating that. And like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's what it was designed to do. But as I say, but it's nice. It's good. Can't complain. Well, I can.
I'm sad and lost, but I still want you.
Right. Okay. So let's sum this little tasting up. Compass Box blended whiskies. Well, they're pretty damn good in actual fact. I think. I love the Asyla. I really like the Asyla. It has changed over the years. I think for my personal taste, I preferred it as it used to be, but it just had a little bit less of an overt oak character, a little bit more richness. But you know, it is what it is, and you know, there's not always the malts around that you want to use when it comes to making a continuing blend. And I think yes, you can argue they're using a lot more first fill American oak now to kind of flesh it out, because there's a lot more oak character. But at the end of the day, as a standalone bottling, you can't go wrong with it. I mean, again, it's what, 30 odd quid, you know, and like I said, you can do an awful lot worse than, you know, pay 30 quid for something a lot less complex than this. So anyway, yeah, not bad, like it, you know, it's a nice whiskey to sell it, you know, it's good. Great King Street, standout bottling in my opinion, absolutely fantastic. I love this whiskey. It's basically, to me, it is a classic blend. It says everything you want about what blended whiskey should all be about. You're getting all the elements of all the different oaks that are used. You're getting elements of all the different malts, the grain. It's harmonious. There's complexity. It's character. You know, it is absolutely stunningly good. And I love this bottling. I think this is absolutely stunning. And the two experimental batches. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. I don't personally believe they're as interesting as the standard bottling, but in saying that, like I said, they're more focused on the characteristics that are on the label. You know, the sherried one is more sherried, the smoky one is more smoky, and when you tend to use these sort of stronger flavours, stronger characteristics, they will tend to be the dominating factor, which they are, and you lose some of the subtlety and some of the complexity. But that is not to say that they're bad whiskies. I just think, as someone that reviews whiskey and what have you, I prefer the balance of the Great King Street as opposed to the two experimental batches. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion. You know, I would suggest that, you know, if you love these sort of whiskies, you love, you know, looking at whiskies and probably arguing the toss with people like me, then go buy a bottle, try it out, taste them against the standard bottling, because, you know, I think you would probably agree that they are on their own not bad bottlings, but when you compare them with the daddy, so to speak, I think they come up a little bit short. But like I said, that's just my own personal opinion. So and so anyway, that's the this episode sort of pretty much wrapped up. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you'll, you know, give Compass Box a look in if you've never heard of them before, or, you know, even if you've sort of had a bottling in the past and, you know, haven't bought another one since. I hope you'll pick one up, not necessarily from us, but from, you know, another quality retailer, should we say. So anyway, like I said, enough waffling for this afternoon. So all that's left to say is good afternoon and good running.